So those of you who are starting task 2, I've had a few questions from students and I wanted to provide a sort of top tips, helpful video for you and things to avoid. Now, before you send your surveys to teachers and to students, please feel free to send them to me to check before you do it. Some of the things I've had are questions like this. So, have your grades been going up or down? Up, down, both up and down. Now, the problem with this is the last answer is really, really confusing. It opens up to too many interpretations. So I just keep it simple. You could even put on average, have your grades been going up or down, and then leave your answers just up, down, or no change. By having an answer that's very ambiguous and can mean lots of things, it's harder to analyze and interpret that information. So make sure your answers are really, really simple. This was another one I had. What is your greatest weakness during the online term? Now, a question like this can be quantifiable very easy. If 10 people say too much work, right? Well, that's a number. 10 people have said that, and it's quantifiable. But by leaving it open like this, you just make it more difficult for yourself to quantify that, because when you get the information back from Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, it's going to be an answer and not a graph. So what is your greatest weakness during the online term? And then have multiple choice. They can only pick one. This way it's really easy to quantify that. And something like this: explain e-learning can give more advantages rather than disadvantages to my academic achievement. Now this was just a confusing question. It was a statement just with the word explain put before it, and it just, to me, it felt a bit confusing. So make sure you're clear. Ask a question and then ask the recipient or the person you're surveying to justify or explain their answer. So do you think e-learning can give more advantages rather than disadvantages to my academic achievement? Should be a question mark. Please justify your answer. Okay, so just by putting the brackets, please justify your answer, or please explain, or why do you think this? They're going to have to do that, but just make sure your questions are really, really simple and clear. How long do you take to finish the assignments that you have for each class? I always finish them. Sometimes I do finish them in class, but sometimes I do not have the time to do so. I do not have enough time to finish them. God, look, it's really confusing. It's really, really confusing. And sometimes, some of these answers are a bit similar. I finished them right before the due date. That kind of is like this, kind of is like this. It's just another confusing question. So when you're coming up with your answers, make sure that there are only limited answers that they can have. Don't have things which kind of mean the same thing. There you go, perfect. How long do you take to finish the assignments that you have for each class? Is it between 30 minutes and half an hour? Is it an hour to 2 hours, or is it more than 2 hours? That's really easy. It can't be both of these. It can only be one answer, and it's really, really clear. It's really easy for me to read. It's just a couple of words. They shouldn't be these big, long sentence answers. This was one I had where I just felt these were questions to teachers. So what do you like most about online teaching? And I just felt the answers were possibly a little bit inappropriate here. Not seeing teachers, not seeing students every day. Yeah, that's not seeing teachers every day. Yeah, that's obviously a big thing, but I felt like that was just more of a student question, like them not seeing their friends or not having to wear your work clothes. I just felt it was maybe a little bit inappropriate for the person you're asking. So make sure you're really considering, asking this to a teacher, and therefore what things might a teacher benefit from or have a downside to. Again, just remember checklists. They can pick multiple answers. And multiple choice, they can only pick one. So actually, while I'm on that, so this bit's important actually. If you obviously it's multiple choice, you need to have biggest, the most, in order to have that superlative there. The best, the most, the biggest, the worst, forces them to only pick one. Whereas what are some downsides, or what are downsides, plural, allows you to pick many, like they've done here. What were some benefits? let's have a look. These questions, I just picked these because they're really, really clear. So if I have a look here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how positive do you feel about the online term? I do not like it at all. I really like it and wish to continue. Now, honestly, could be 1 to 5. Doesn't need to be 10. 5 is more than sufficient, but the question's really clear and the answers are really clear. Does e-learning provide you with different learning styles that can make your learning more fun? Yes or no? Again, really, really, really clear. You could double onto this and put what aspects of e-learning do you find fun, and then maybe do a multiple choice or a checklist, but the questions should be clear and the answers even clearer. What was the greatest challenge you faced during the online term? Again, superlative there, multiple choice. The answers are just really, really clear. They're 2 words. And then we've got a couple of qualitative questions here. In what ways has the new work environment personally affected you in all aspects? Please be as detailed as possible. I picked this one because I loved this sentence after it. Please be as detailed as possible. You're forcing the recipient to answer more than just one word. Explain whether you think e-learning provides good instructional learning programs to you, even if you are far from the teacher, and why. By asking why or explanations, you force people to write a little bit more. Also, don't forget, on your e-learning surveys, you should have a small paragraph which just gives the purpose of your survey. So there are 2 examples here. This survey is meant to help understand what e-learning has been like for teachers and what their thoughts on it are. It has been a difficult transition for everyone, and through this I'm trying to gather data on teachers' experiences. Please answer honestly. Or this one here. No one could have imagined that a day would come where all of us would be at home learning. COVID-19 has made that day happen all of a sudden. Even though e-learning is making everything easier for us, some of us would disagree. No one was prepared or ready to start using e-learning. On the contrary, by the time we got used to it, everyone is now dependent on e-learning, whether they are teachers, doctors, or students. Now with this one, I think you need to put a statement there saying, I'm trying to gather evidence on this, and also try to avoid giving your own personal opinions. Finally, when you're sending them out, this is from Judy, just be aware that, be formal to write an email. I'd actually include this in your email. And that's it. So in sum, make sure your questions are clear. Make sure you're picking the appropriate question. Do you need a multiple choice question, a checklist question, great, or a Likert scale? Great tools if you're doing quantifiable questions. If you're asking for a qualitative question, make sure you've got a statement like please explain, please justify, please describe why. Make sure your answers in multiple choice questions are really clear. Don't have ambiguous answers. That means that maybe it's this, maybe it's that. It's a grey area. We don't really know. It needs to be very clear, black and white. It's this, or it's this. You can't have 2 or you can't have 3. In checklists, obviously you can. Again, consider when you word the question, if it's a checklist, what are some of the, or what are the plural, what are the benefits with an S? And if it's a multiple choice, you can only pick one, so you might want to consider what is the biggest, what is the most, what is the greatest, what is the best, what is the worst. Okay? Guys, please feel free to send me your surveys before you send them out to students and teachers. If you have any questions, ask.